My name is Heather Murray and I'm a real estate agent, and I'm here to talk to you about how you become a real estate agent and the duties that it entails. First of all, thank you so much for joining me. I wish I could have been with you in person. However, due to circumstances, we're going to be doing this virtually online. If you have any questions for me at the end of the video, I'll give you my website. I'll go ahead and show it to you now if you want to write it down, but you'll have plenty of time. About 10 or 15 minutes this will be, and you can go get a pen or a pencil. Go ahead and put your request into realtor706.com to send me a quick message, and I can always answer any questions that you have. That's the one part I miss about doing these live with the children. So first of all, I'm a real estate agent, and in order to be one, there's a couple of things you need to do. The first thing is you need to be 18 years old. You need to have a high school degree or an equivalent, meaning if you didn't graduate high school, you could have a GED as well. You have to take 75 hours of what's called a pre-license course. You could do this online. I did mine in person just because I do better that way, but you could also have an online option if you would like. You have to be a good moral character. You have to be a resident of the state of Georgia. Again, this is to get your Georgia license, so you have to be a resident of the state of Georgia. And then you have to take an exam, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So to take the class, this is a 75-hour class. First step in becoming a real estate agent. So you can go online or you can do this in a regular classroom setting. So this is the book that you go over. Lots of reading, lots of quizzes. This is basically the book that we went through. And then this here is all of my notes and quizzes and exams. And this is all to prepare you for the actual test that you're going to take that the state gives. So you take 75 hours. You have to go to class 75 hours, and here it lists all the days that I took it. So I took it in the evenings as well as on the weekends. Took a couple months to take the class. Then the second step was you have to go to an exam. I went and took mine in Macon, but you can also go to Atlanta or Savannah, and you take a test. You take the test on a computer, and it's a pass or a fail test. You have to pass the exam in order then to apply for your license. It's a really difficult test. I studied months and months for it, and they give you 4 hours for the test. So think of being in a classroom situation where a teacher might give you half an hour for a test and you think that's a very long time. This state exam took 4 hours. The good news is I passed it. If you don't pass it, you can go back and take the test again, but you just have to pay for the exam each time you take it. So it's better to pass it the first time so you don't have to spend the money for an additional test. Once you take the exam and you pass the exam, then you can go and you can interview with a broker. And we'll talk about the broker's requirements a little bit more in another video. But basically, you go to a real estate agency. I interviewed with a couple, and I ended up working for Better Homes and Gardens, real estate agency executive partners. They actually have an office in Augusta. However, we service the complete what's called a CSRA. So I can sell houses in Waynesboro. I can help people buy homes in Lincolnton, all the way over to Augusta, Rennes, all around. I can help people with buying and selling homes. So once you do that part, then you get your license. So you get a nice license. It has my name, and it also has my license number. That's really important because every document that I sign, being a real estate agent, every official document, I have to put on my license number. So you have to be a licensed real estate agent in the state of Georgia in order to help people buy, sell real estate. So the other thing that I'm going to show you really quick, this one's a little bit smaller, but I also have my South Carolina license. So since where we live is so close to the South Carolina border, since I passed the exam under Georgia state law, I could go and what's called reciprocal. They reciprocate, go back and forth. I can apply, of course, pay the fee to get my South Carolina license. Once I have this license, you have 1 year that you have to go and study a little bit more and take a 24-hour, what's called post-license class. Remember in the beginning, I talked about the pre-license was 75 hours. Pre means before. This is post-license, meaning post after. So after you get your license, you have 1 year to get 24 hours in your post-license study. And again, I did mine in person in a classroom situation because that's just how I work best, but you can do this online as well. So once you get with a brokerage, there are several in town, and if you're watching this anywhere around the country, there might be different ones around where you are. Some are what we call franchises, which is what Better Homes and Gardens is. All over the country, they have Better Homes and Gardens real estate offices, and each one is called a franchise. So I work for the one in Augusta. And there's also other agencies that could be an LLC, which means they're a smaller entity and they're just in that one town. So there's several of them as well. So I kind of told you a little bit about how you become a real estate agent. So good news is anybody can do it. You don't have to have a college education. However, I did. You just have to be, again, 18 years old and have a high school graduate. Be a high school graduate or equivalent for that. Do your 75 hours and pass your exam. So what do you do as a real estate agent? Do you just unlock doors and show people houses? Well, this is how it starts. Usually somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to buy my house, or hey, I'd like to sell my house. Those are two things that I do. I help buyers, I help sellers. Another thing that I do is I help renters. Those are people who want to rent a house. So I help renters and I help owners. So sometimes people don't want to sell their house, they still own their house, but they have to pay their mortgage, which is kind of like their monthly payment to pay off the bank for that home. So what they do is they decide they're going to rent their house. So the owner comes to our company, and then they might not be in town, or they might be, but they want someone else to help them manage it. So then it's called property management because you're helping to manage the property for that owner. So the owner hires the agent. The agent then goes out and finds a renter and then takes care of everything with that house, things that might come up, repairs, questions the renter might have, and is also in charge of having that renter pay the rent to the company, and then the company gives the owner that rent money. So that's one thing that we do. A second thing that we do is we work with two different types of properties. There's residential, which is when we help people living in a neighborhood, okay? Most of you watching probably live in what's called a residence. A residence could be a home, it could be an apartment, it could be a mobile home, but that is a place that you live. So you have residential. The second part is called commercial. The easiest way that I think to remember commercial is when you're watching television and those things that come on in between the show is called a commercial. They're trying to sell you a product or a service. So commercial buildings are places like Walmart or a hairdresser or a lawn service. Any place where people do not live and it's a business, that's called commercial. So I help people with that as well. Buying and selling commercial real estate, also buying and selling residential real estate. And then there's one more thing that I can help people do, and that's called land. Land or lots. The difference between that is land is a big amount of space that just has the land on it. Somebody owns that, they want to sell it, I can help with that transaction. A lot is, think about if you live in a neighborhood and there are a bunch of different houses, is there one place in your neighborhood that has a area with no home, that's called a lot. So somebody can buy that lot and build their own house. Okay, so I can help people with residential, commercial, land, and lots. Those are the 4 things I do, in addition to helping people with rentals. So how does that all happen? Well, somebody comes to me and says, Miss Heather, I would like some help with buying a home. So we find out a couple things. What type of home they want, how many bedrooms, how much money do they have, either to pay cash. So if you save a lot of money and put it in the bank, you can buy your house in cash. The other thing that people do is they get a loan. They get a loan from a lender. A lender is usually some sort of banking institution. So the lender lends the person the money, because houses are expensive, so they lend all the money for the house, and then every month the person pays back a little bit at a time to the lender, which is called a mortgage. So the buyer comes to me, we figure out what the buyer would like to look for. So I go onto my computer and I pull out homes that they might be interested in. So it tells me here how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, is the owner suite on the main floor? Some people that's important too. Think about your house. Are all the bedrooms on the second floor, or is there 1 or 2 bedrooms on the first floor? What about the really big bedroom? The place where mom and dad sleeps, or where the owner of the house sleeps, or your guardian sleeps? That's called an owner's bedroom. Sometimes it's called an owner suite if they have the bedroom and that bathroom that only the owner or the parent uses. That's called an owner's suite because it has the bedroom and the bathroom. Some people like that on the first floor. Some people like it on the second floor. So that's why that's very important to be listed on my paper. Another really important part for parents who might have children might be where they go to school. So over here on this side, it'll tell me what the elementary school is, middle school, and high school. Sometimes that's important if parents want to move, but they want to make sure that their child remains in the same high school. So I can put in a search feature on the computer that will only pull up that certain high school that they would like. Also on here is the year built, how old the home is, and the approximate square footage. That's important too, because depending on how many children you have, how many pets you have, how big you want your house, some buyers want a big house, some buyers want a small house. So that's pretty important. And then all down on the bottom it shows property descriptions, how big the house is, things like that, or how big each room is, I'm sorry. So I have a big list. I email all these houses. I send an email to the buyer. The buyer comes back and says, okay, Miss Heather, I like these 5 houses. So then what I do is I call the person who is called a listing agent because they listed the house for sale. And I say, hi, can we come see your house on Thursday at 3 o'clock? They let me know whether that's fine or not. So we go, we find the house. Let's say we find the perfect house. How do we buy a house? Well, that's the other fun part. This is a contract. It's called a purchase and sale agreement. So I'll cover up some of the private information. On a purchase and sale agreement, you put down, if you're the buyer, how much you would like to buy the house for. You give what's called an offer to the seller. So as a real estate agent, this is what I help with. I help the buyer figure out what we're going to offer for their house. Are there any special stipulations, special requests we would like to ask for? Perhaps we want to make sure that the refrigerator stays with the house. Perhaps they're still living in it, so when they move out, we want to make sure that the carpets are professionally cleaned. Perhaps we want to ask for a 1-year home warranty. There's all sort of different things you can ask for. So we fill out this purchase and sale agreement. Everything's done online on a computer. We send it kind of like sending an email, but we send it to the seller. The seller reads it to decide if they would like to accept our offer. If they don't want to, they come back, which is called a counter offer. They say, we want a couple of things changed. Then it comes back to the buyer. So then the buyer has to decide, do they want to take these changes? If they don't, they can go back again. So you go back and forth until both the buyer and the seller agrees. And this is the same procedure that you use for residential, commercial, and land. The buyer proposes an offer, then the seller decides, do they like that offer? Are they going to sell their land or their home or their business for that amount of money? The answer is yes. They come back, they sign everything, and the process begins. The next step that you have after we set on an offer and it becomes binding, the next thing that we do is we have an inspection. The buyer pays somebody who's called a home inspector to go in and look at the house. As the agent, as the representative of the buyer, I also go along to the inspection just to make sure that things are being done the right way. Also, the inspector does not have a key to get into the house. So I need to go in there and unlock the house for them and make sure everything's done safely and correctly. Although the home inspector, again, that's another video that we can talk a little bit more detail, or perhaps I can invite one of my home inspector friends to come online and tell you about that. So the home inspector has a report, and then he writes down things that he notices that might be wrong with the home. Okay, in this one, the screen was missing. Now that might seem like something really simple, but it's important to notate. This one says how the siding, the outside of the house, is damaged outside. This one here shows that there's cracks in the bedroom ceiling. So once we have the home inspection report, again, thinking I'm on the side of the buyer decides what's important for him to have the seller fix before they buy the house. So this comes to what's called amendment to address concerns with the property. You can go and ask the seller, please fix these things before I buy your house. Again, this is what's called a negotiation. The seller can agree, or they can say, nope, I'm not going to fix these 3 things. I'm going to only fix this one. It's called a counter offer. Then the buyer decides, do I really want to have this house? They can go ahead and change their mind. If they change their mind under what's called, big word, due diligence. A due diligence is also written into the original contract, usually 14 days, sometimes more, sometimes less. But during due diligence, you have that choice. If you do not like what comes up in the home inspection, or a big problem comes out, you can decide, oh, you know what, this is just a little too much for me, and then you can get your deposit back. If it's after that due diligence time frame, say it was 14 days, and you wanted to decide you don't want the house on day 21, you can still pull out, but guess what? That seller gets to keep your deposit because they pulled their house off of the market for a long time, so they get that money. Most of the time that doesn't happen. It's my job as an agent to help the buyer and the seller work together to get the deal done. So let's say we have the house. The last thing we have is, thought I had one here. It's called a closing. So usually this is 30 days after you give an offer, about a month, because it takes time for the lawyers to do things, which is called a title search, which is another video for the lender to help with the financing. All those things come together, and on day 30, you can have a closing. That's the day that the buyer and myself as that buyer's agent, the seller and that seller's listing agent meet at a lawyer's office. The lawyer is the one who goes over all the official paperwork and makes sure that the person selling the house has the legal right to sell that house, and that the buyer has the funds to buy that house. So then on closing day, the buyer gets new keys, the seller gets some money, and somebody's here, but we'll let the dog keep on barking. We're all working from home these days, so sometimes you have unexpected things happen. So the closing's a wonderful day where the deal has finally gone through. Now the other thing with that is, as a real estate agent, something I'd like to mention really quickly is that I work on what's called commission. Some people work and they make a paycheck. If they go to work and they work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's 8 hours, and they make $10 an hour, they get $80 per day. So then they'll get a check at the end of the week. If they work 40 hours a week, $10 an hour, 40 times 10 would be $400 before taxes. So that's if they work a regular hour. I work on what's called commission. So when my buyer comes to me and they want to buy a house, I don't get paid for all the work I do until that very last day. Say it's day 30. On day 30, I get paid at closing time. So the lawyer actually writes a check to Better Homes and Gardens executive partners from the sale of that house, from some of the proceeds of the sale of that house. I then take that check to Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate Executive Partners. I turn it into the office, and then I get a commission or a percentage of each sale that I do. So I have to work very hard and very long before I even receive a paycheck. So sometimes that's a deterrent from some people not wanting to get into real estate. Here's the fun thing about real estate. You get to meet all sorts of people from all around the United States, even around the country. The last house that I helped someone buy, they came here from Germany. And so that was a really interesting transaction that I got to really talk to people, develop relationships, and learn about their culture over in Germany as well. Sometimes people move for different reasons because they're in the military. Was one that I just sold over in Augusta. They own their home and they had to move to Alaska because the military was sending them to Alaska. So people move for all kinds of different reasons, and as a real estate agent, it's my job to try to help them. So I hope you learned a lot today. There's two things I want to mention to you. First of all, another thing I really missed because I'm not with you in person is getting you a goodie bag. We all love goodies. Well, our office is temporarily, everyone's working from home, but we really hope to soon be able to go back to work into the office and to hopefully see some of your beautiful faces. Maybe over the summer, if you want to schedule a field trip and come in and visit me in the office and see what everybody does, I can talk a little bit more with you about things I mentioned, like a broker or a lender, a home inspector. I can help introduce you to those people, and we can learn about their jobs as well and what entails in being those different jobs that works along with a real estate agent. So, here it is. Excuse me. Remember, if you have any questions, go to Realtor706.com, and you can just go on there. If you need help from an adult, make sure to ask them for some help. And once the office opens back up, say, I'd like to come in and tour your office, and leave me an email, and we can definitely help you with that once we're able to all get back together. The last thing is real estate agents are very vast. There's people who are young, there's people who are old, there's boys, there's girls, all around the world, different types of people. But the one thing that they all have in common is that they enjoy working with people, and they develop relationships with these people because you're helping them move into a home, which is a very stressful thing sometimes. I love to read, and this book has helped me so much with real estate and just other things. It's called The Power of a Human Connection, and this will transform your business with appreciation. So if you're interested, or your parent or any adult you're with is interested in this book, How Relationship Marketing is Transforming the Way People Succeed, you don't have to be a real estate agent. This can help you in any part of your life. This is more for an older student or for an adult. I would say 14 or above. If you would like to receive this book for free, again, just go to realtor706.com and I would be more than happy to share it with you. Being a real estate agent is about relationships and helping people buy their home with minimizing the stress, also knowing the law, the Georgia law, and things we can do and things we can't do. So thank you so much, boys and girls, for watching. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Bye-bye.